Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Carly Stevens, and this is Carly Stevens Books for all things writing, publishing, and indie author life. And I am here with Maria Greenhalgh today. Thank you so much for making the time to talk to me.
Thank you, Carly.
Yeah, so Maria is a bilingual author, which is the topic for today. I'm going to ask all kinds of questions. I'm looking forward to it. She's also a lifelong learner, a wife, and a mother of two. She writes children's books in English and in Spanish. Maria left the corporate world to pursue her dreams, one of which was to become a published author. Literacy and love of nature, in particular anything ocean related, changed Maria's life as a child. She learned English at the age of 10 when her family immigrated to the United States. Maria fell in love with learning and credits her education for helping her find a career she loved, leading teams in the financial services sector. So, very different from the author career
Yeah.
that you also have now. Now her focus is on inspiring children to love learning as well as appreciate and take care of the world we live in. Her books also encourage adults to value and love the uniqueness of each child. With her newest book, she's hoping to inspire the youngest of readers to be advocates for marine life and for conservation. So this is going to be great. I am just so pleased to be able to chat with you today, Maria.
Likewise, Carly.
So Maria and I met at a writing conference about 6 months ago, and it stuck with me the idea of writing books both in English and in Spanish when those are two languages that you personally speak. So before we get into the nitty gritty of being a bilingual author and doing your own translations, how did you get into writing in the first place?
Well, you know what? Writing has always been a passion of mine. I remember being a little girl and just loving to make up stories, and in particular, write the stories so that I could read them later on. So it's something that I have always been very, very passionate about. And you mentioned that I was in the corporate environment for many, many years. And believe it or not, in the corporate environment, it's all about also knowing how to write and how to support your employees well. So I was able to use my writing skills to do well in the corporate world, especially when it came to supporting my employees, because in order for my employees to do well, their performance evaluations also had to be very, very well written.
Hmm.
In order to submit their names to win awards, a very good written report on their accomplishments had to be submitted. So I've been writing for a very, very long time. But it wasn't until recently, when I retired 3 years ago, that I decided, well, I'm not doing what I was loving doing, and that is supporting employees through my writing. What can I do now? So then I started thinking about what messages need to get out there in this
Hmm.
world at the moment. And one of the first ones that came to my mind was really supporting parents and understanding their children
Hmm.
and loving their kids just as they are. And from that idea came my first book, Beautiful Daughter, which is really the story of a mother and the relationship that she had with her daughter. And she felt like she wanted the daughter to be a very girly girl. But ultimately, the little girl grew up to be quite different, but beautiful nevertheless, and very, very successful. And so that was my very first book. And I thought, well, it's wonderful that it can reach. If I wanted to reach a broader audience, it would be great if I could have it in Spanish as well. So I translated it in Spanish myself because I'm bilingual. And then I started thinking, well, I can have even a greater impact if I can have someone else translate it into French. So that particular book is now available in 3 different languages. And that's really kind of the approach that I've taken for my books. I wanted to appeal to a broader audience, but I always wanted to be a message that will impact someone positively.
I love that. I love that you started off your, I guess, writing journey with very practical kinds of messages, and now you're just turning them into um, fictional versions of passing along those positive messages. So it sounds like it was mostly the just getting more a broader audience involved that was the deciding factor for doing your own translation, for doing an English version and a Spanish version, and, I had forgotten since I was so impressed with your own translation, um, skills that you had also commissioned this in French. Is there any other reason why you decided to release your work in multiple languages?
Other than making sure that it had a as broad as impact as it could possibly have, not really. I think being bilingual really opens up so many opportunities,
Mm,
especially for kids, right? It's not just the possibility of being paid a little bit more at your job, but it's understanding more cultures. It's forming relationships, getting to hear different stories and points of view and other perspectives. I thought that's really, really, really important. So if I can contribute even a little bit, if I can encourage kids to want to learn that second, that third language, plus make sure that I'm leaving them with a positive message, that's something that really spoke to me.
I love that. So what is your process then? Do you begin in Spanish? Do you begin in English? Do you release all the versions of it at the same time? Kind of how do you go about practically doing all of these
For the
translated versions of your
translations.
book?
Exactly. You know what? It just starts with the inspiration. What is it that my heart is telling me now? What's needed now? And sometimes I'm thinking of the story in English in my mind. Sometimes certain words in Spanish come to mind, but for the most part, I will type it up, it'll be in English, right? And then I'll translate it into Spanish. And there are some translations when I'm doing translating from English to Spanish that I feel like, you know what, I need to add a little bit more to this particular translation because I think it'll make more sense this way. But typically, I will start with the English version.
Yeah, that's really interesting to me because I feel like I'm not fully bilingual myself. I've studied a variety of languages, so I
Oh,
have a
that's
sense
awesome.
of kind of how language works and things like that. Enough to know that it's not as simple as you just take this word and then, go through and translate. There are all kinds of connotations that don't necessarily translate, or there are expressions that are not the same. There are all these nuances in translation that not everybody's aware of. So your versions, it sounds like they're not identical in the sense of being word for word, but it's the
Exactly.
meaning that's the same. Am I reading that right?
Oh my goodness, you're spot on, Carly, because
Mm.
one of the mistakes that authors sometimes make is thinking that you can translate the entire story in Google and then it will make sense. And that's a big mistake because you're right, there are nuances to the story that just do not translate very well at all. So even when I do my own translations, I do a lot of research into words.
Hmm.
You know how it is, Carly, when you're an author, you look at a word and you think, am I considering the nuances? What is it inferring? What is it? Is it the right word? Is it the right context? So I struggle with those words, whether it's in English or in Spanish. I do
Hmm.
quite a bit of research.
That's surprising to me, actually. I would think that since you can speak both,
Right.
fluently, that you wouldn't have to do that additional research, but translation is its own skill that would,
Exactly.
so that would make sense. Huh.
Yes, and not only do I make sure that the words that I'm using are appropriate for the story and that they convey the message that I'd like to convey, I am also a big proponent of making sure that whatever work you put out, that it goes through a second set of eyes, through an editor, whether it's in English or in Spanish, always. Because there are things that, we miss as authors.
It's very true. So that kind of brings me to my next question then. So uh so you have multiple editors, it sounds like. You have multiple covers? Do you have multiple marketing strategies? Like how much do you have to double up on, or do you generally focus on one version for a while? How does that work?
Well, I am not organized at all when it comes to marketing. It's essentially, what am I feeling today? Am I feeling like today is the message that I'm going to talk about, for example, a turtle's hero? Or am I going to focus on my first book? What's needed now? So was it 2 days ago we celebrated Earth's Day? So I thought it was appropriate to make sure that I put something out there with regarding a turtle's hero, right? It was relevant
Right,
because
perfect.
in a turtle's hero, towards the end, you find out that Maddie, the character, the reason he becomes a turtle's hero is because he decides to not only take care of turtles but also clean up the environment, and that's really the positive influence and the impact that Maddie is having. That lended itself very well to Earth Day. So I thought, well, I'll market my this particular book during Earth Day. So it just kind of depends on what I think is most relevant. For example, Daughter's Day is coming up September 25th, 26th. So I believe that around that time I will start promoting my book, Beautiful Daughter. It's
Mm.
just what's relevant at the moment. And honestly, as an author, we're the writer, we're the proofreader, we're the editor, we're the marketing department, we have to do all of that. So it's about balancing what we're doing.
Mm.
It's not perfect, but I'm enjoying it.
So I follow some Instagram accounts, for example, that are bilingual. So it'll be half English, half Italian for the different audiences that they
Mhm.
have. Is that kind of how you would approach a post, or do you do one
That,
or the other?
honestly,
Or
that's the way that I would recommend that we approach it. But I'm guilty of really focusing on the visual and not so much on the bilingual version on, for example, my Instagram posts or Facebook. But that's really the way I'm leaning towards heading that way. And I do highly recommend anything that's put out there that it be bilingual,
Hmm.
especially if you're a bilingual author. So I'm guilty of not always putting both versions out there.
I mean, it's twice as much work. So I was trying to consider, how like do you have different approaches for, is there one platform where more, Spanish speaking people tend to find books versus English speaking people, or I really am not sure, none of my books are translated, so I haven't had to go over that hurdle.
Put it out there, right? You know what's helped a lot, Carly, is
Mm,
getting to know other bilingual authors
mm,
and really leveraging the relationships so that when I put on Instagram, then they're sharing with their audience and I will share their posts with mine. Um, I'm trying to think of an example. So the Martinez kids, I think it's an Instagram account that I follow, and Minda is a bilingual author. So frequently, she will either post my stuff or I will actually support her. We support one another. So through supporting other authors, so that's how you kind of gain an audience. And also because I don't write to the market, I really focus on the message. So I'm looking for, it may not be a great big huge audience, Carly, but it's my little audience. So for example, the Turtles Hero, when I did the Kickstarter, I was in San Carlos, Mexico. Again, a great big huge community of people who care about the environment there and
mm,
about turtles and about cleaning up and making sure that we take care of this world. So it's about knowing where is your audience, who are you trying to reach. And I would recommend, don't worry about the great big huge world of people, because if you try to appeal to everyone, you may appeal to no one ultimately. Like, who is it that you're trying to really bring the message to?
mm. That makes a lot of sense. That a couple of really good pieces of advice there, focusing on like what the message is, what the story is, and trying to get that out to the people who are going to love it, and then connecting with other bilingual authors. I think it
Exactly.
should be a given, but you say it, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, of course, you have to do that. So for people who are thinking about doing translations, I know they can be very expensive for people who don't have the ability to do it themselves. What advice would you give? Because you've kind of had both experiences. You've had your work translated in French, and then you've done it yourself in Spanish. So, is there a point at which you would feel comfortable telling other people to do their own translations? Or, basically your best advice for people who are looking at
Yeah.
this?
It just kinda depends on your budget and what you're trying to accomplish. Um, as I've mentioned earlier, I mean, if you start with Google, if it's Spanish is not your first language, Carly, there's nothing wrong with it, but always, always, always run it by someone who is truly bilingual and can understand the nuances of the language. And then also understand that you're going to spend a little bit of money because even if it's a short children's book, let's say it's under 1,000 words, right? Uh, if someone is doing a great job of proofreading and editing your book, then they're going to take the time to truly understand and possibly even explain to you why, when they find a mistake, why it's a mistake so that you can understand,
Hmm.
right? And how it can be corrected. So know that it does take time, but I do recommend reaching out to a professional. And then, as a third step, is having someone who's bilingual, a friend, another author, read it and just be open to feedback.
Hmm.
Be open to feedback.
Well, that is really helpful. I want to make sure that somebody who has been down that road is the person who's giving the advice, because I feel like it would be easy to just forge on ahead and not do translations the justice that they deserve. So that's some really helpful stuff. So for anybody who's interested in learning more about you and finding a Turtles Hero or
Mhm.
your other work, where can they do that online?
I do have a website. It's mariajgreenhall.com. You can also find some of my books on Amazon. You can reach out to me through email, judy.greenhall@gmail.com. By the way, my full name is Maria Judith, so that's where the Judy comes in, right? uh, One of my other passions is supporting authors. So if you or anyone is truly interested in translating their book and you'd like to actually pick up the phone and spend a few minutes talking to me, I'm more than happy to help you because I know how important it is, and I know that by helping other authors, then more kids will get to enjoy more books. So I'm always happy to help, Carly.
That is super generous. So I'll put all that information down below in the
Okay.
description. Yeah, definitely check out Maria's website, check out her charming books, especially if you have, kids in your life, sons, daughters, nieces, nephews. Then these are just lovely, lovely presents. So check them out. Again, thank you so much for joining me today. I had a blast talking to you. It's just always a joy. So, for those of you out there, like this video if you like it, subscribe for more writing, publishing, and indie author life, and I will see you next week. Bye.
Thank you, Carly. Bye, everyone.